Sox fans, welcome in to another edition of the Sox On Tap podcast. It's Tony Marchese alongside NWI Steve, hashtag Vibes Guy. We are hashtag back in the saddle here, Steven, after a holiday weekend. I hope yours was great. I hope the listeners were great. Hope you celebrated the greatest country on the face of this earth this past weekend, Stephen. I know I did. I know Sunday was a little rough for me. I've heard from some sources that it was rough for a lot of people due to excessive celebrations. America's 250th birthday. What a great country, Stephen. I can't say that enough. It allows us to be on these airwaves and discuss White Sox baseball with everyone. Stephen, how are you doing, my friend?
Hey, yo, Anthony. I be stroking. That's what I be doing. Doing great, to echo your sentiments there. I had a nice little weekend there celebrating America's 250th, as you so eloquently put, the greatest country this world has ever seen, and it should be celebrated. And I find great humor in all of these Europeans that have come here for this silly footy nonsense, recognizing that all the things that they were told about America were wrong, and they realize how great this fucking place is. It's cracked me up quite a bit, to be honest with you. But on more important notes, 4-3 road trip out east. They were stroking it to the east, and listen, got the job done. I think coming into that last week, I think a lot of us had some fear and trepidation given the struggles that they've had in Baltimore and in the mistake by the lake, but they came out of it unscathed. 4-3 could have been a little bit better, but vibes are good. Vibes are good.
Hey, winning road trips, that's something that we had sort of not really seen much of this season. Obviously, we've talked a lot about the home record, how great they've done at 35th and Shields throughout this season. You've seen a lot of those wins. I've taken in a handful of them myself. It's been really good at home. We've had our question marks about what was wrong with this team on the road. Baltimore scared me a little bit. Cleveland scared me a lot coming into this road trip. We sort of talked about what they needed to do to sort of weather the storm on this. And I think they came out a little bit better than weathering the storm. When you get, 4-3 road trip out east in two houses of horrors, really. I mean, they hadn't won a game in Cleveland, and I don't know how long. What was it, back since 2022, Stephen?
They had lost 9 straight.
You don't really enter that series thinking, hey, we've got a good opportunity to go 3-1. I wanted 3-1 in Cleveland, but I'll take 2-2, Stephen. It was a rough start to that, but they did battle back. Some close games, 6-5 loss there on Thursday, and then on Friday another 1-run game that they lose. Both of those games, Steve, just. I don't know, man. My phone was blowing up with a lot of anger. There was some hashtag mad online taking place after those two losses, and rightfully so. Both of those were very winnable baseball games for the Chicago White Sox, especially the 2026 edition of the Chicago White Sox. And they just fell a little bit short. I don't know if you want to get into the weeds on this, but what was the problem on Thursday and Friday from your perspective? That they just couldn't get it over the hump there.
There were some things in that game on Thursday, and Bez and I talked about this when we did our show Thursday night. There were some tactical things that I disagreed with how Will Venable managed the bullpen in particular. So I wasn't real thrilled with that. Friday, again, you give up a lead. And, one thing that we've unfortunately seen for the last 2 weeks, a little bit here, and it reared its ugly head this past weekend in Cleveland, was Colson Montgomery making some timely defensive miscues when he has been really solid all season. And it's just, they were able to overcome one of them. in that game yesterday and get a win, but he had a timely error in that game on Friday, unfortunately, and it's just you can't afford to make mistakes like that when you're playing in a venue in a place that you have just struggled for such a long period of time. You almost have to play flawless baseball, and they didn't do that in the games on Thursday and Friday, and they were able to overcome it in the game on Sunday. But I think it was just that more than anything. You had a low scoring game over there on Thursday, or excuse me, on Friday in that loss. But, it was just kind of one of those things where I remember going to bed that night on Friday, pissed off at the world. And it's just like, they're never going to win a game in Cleveland ever again for as long as I'm alive. Like that's where I was at mentally.
That was seemingly the reaction, Steve. I probably couldn't have picked two games to really sort of miss. And I put something out there on X. I know you're not online, but I said, hey, I'm sorry that I've missed these two games. I had some bowling to do. I had some golfing to do. And it just sort of coincided with these White Sox games. And, listening on the radio, keeping an eye on things, but not as much as I'd like to. And they wind up losing these games. I come back and sort of just get the vibe and the feel. And the vibes were not good, Steve. The vibes were not good Friday night. And I guess for me, at least, like my White Sox fan mental health, not actively watching every pitch of both of those ball games was probably the healthiest thing that I could have done, because lo and behold, Saturday they come out there. Colson Montgomery has a great game. You win on America's birthday, and the vibes are all of a sudden back. And then they take care of business on Sunday. And, I feel like I missed sort of like that low point there. I didn't go to bed on Friday night thinking the world was over. And, I'm still riding sort of those high vibes because I didn't witness the bad. I will say this. As I was falling asleep on Friday night, I was rewatching the game, and I sort of watched what happened. And that's the point where I sort of turned off the TV as they were about to walk us off for the second time. And I said, we don't need to see that. So I don't know how painful it was, but it looked like it was getting pretty painful there towards the end, and just the manner in which they lost that game. There were some booted balls. They gave up a lead. Things that were sort of reminiscent of a bad White Sox team from our past.
Reminiscent of nightmares of Cleveland past.
Correct. Yes. Horror shows. And it seemed like they were, sort of using your monkey ear from a couple of years ago in Southside Clown Show out there on the field. And you know how much I love Little League bullshit and throwing the ball around and booting baseballs and all that stuff. So I understand why people were mad. But again, I was happy that I just somehow narrowly missed the up and down roller coaster that Friday was specifically.
So for me personally, this is something I know I need to stop doing, but I can't bring myself to do it. I take these losses against Cleveland harder than I do against any other team. And that even includes probably Minnesota, just because of just like thinking about that period in the mid 90s, with Hillbilly Jim, hitting the home runs against the Sox all the time, and Manny Ramirez, and all the other guys that were ruining my early teen years.
Wasn't Albert Bell there for a little while?
Joey Albert Bell was there until he came to 35th and Shields in '97. But there was just there were so many guys there. The pride of East Chicago, Indiana, Kenny Lofton Kenny
Lofton. That's the next name I was going with.
It's a fucking menace, So
one of my favorite baseball players, despite his time in Cleveland. But that guy knew how to be a leadoff hitter.
Yeah, I fucking hate him. So it's just I take it so hard because of it being them, and I think a lot of that is maybe predicated on the fact that I was alive for White Flag in '97. So like it just stings more when they lose to them.
I still remember the newspaper that morning. White flag. It was one of the darkest days of my early youth. There's something about I hate Minnesota. I hate Detroit. We all know Detroit sucks, but I also look at the Cleveland Indians for most of my life, and now the Guardians, but Cleveland in general. They've always been a thorn in our side, and they don't seemingly ever go through some long, drought where they're terrible.
Well, they do go through one prolonged drought, but
it doesn't feel like it's as often as everybody else. Minnesota can find themselves at the bottom of the division for quite a while. Detroit has done so. We've done so. Kansas City has done so. It feels like Cleveland is just almost a perennial. Even if they're not a contender, they're a team that feels like they can beat you any year.
Yeah, it's annoying. It's been so long since they've won less than 78 games.
I want multiple 100-loss seasons in a row.
I would love that. And the other thing that I know I need to stop doing, so
it builds character.
Fuck that. I think I've built enough character to last a lifetime. The other thing I know I need to stop doing is, so I watch the games on my DirecTV stream. Routinely, the stream.
I know where you're going with this.
Routinely, the stream is 1 to 2 pitches behind. And in tense moments, I have a propensity to get this bad boy out. And I have to pull up the MLB application. And, when on Thursday, when Rokio comes up and I see in-play runs, and I literally throw my phone. I know I need to stop, but I can't.
You do need to stop doing that, because there has been more than one occasion so far this season that I'm, a couple pitches behind on the streaming service in the Garaje de Marchese. And I'll get a text message from you, and it just says fuck this. And the batter isn't even at the plate yet. And then 3 pitches go by, and then something bad happens, and I'm like, what are we doing here? How are you this far ahead? And these aren't because you're in the stadium. I can accept in the stadium text messages, but when you're a couple of pitches ahead of me on a road game.
When I'm a couple pitches ahead and I send the Scott Hall gift, do you have a problem with that?
You know what? Not really. Not so much.
Okay.
If it's bad, don't tell me about it. If it's a good thing, by all means, let me know so I can alert everyone else around me something good's about to happen. But other than that, I think you're doing yourself a little bit of a disservice getting angry about what you're gonna watch in a minute there.
In a lot of ways, it is a sickness. Something about being a sicko. I don't know.
Hey, number 2 White Sox Sicko podcast on White Sox X, apparently nominated by none other than B-Flow from the 108. Speaking of, we should probably give them a shout out. Our guy BZ was over there on the Ajus with Mr. Delicious himself just before we got live here on the Sox on Tap airwaves, Steven. So our group is ever present tonight on the interwebs.
We are
on the interwebs. Steven, the Sox were able to salvage the final 2 games of this series, and not only just salvage the final 2 games, they also salvaged the top spot in the AL Central. And for a team that didn't enter this season with aspirations of competing, at least from the fan base or what Vegas said or the national pundits, you could take whatever the team believed in themselves. I'm sure they did. And I don't think that there's any Major League Baseball player or Major League manager or coaching staff that enters a season not thinking about the playoffs or winning the World Series. That's fair. But I don't think anybody believed that they would be still remaining in the top spot in the AL Central or tied for it or around it or sniffing it post 4th of July. And yet here we are. Post 4th of July, we're past the halfway point in the season. We're almost at the All-Star break. And yet the White Sox are still here, still finding ways to win baseball games that, sometimes they shouldn't. Sometimes they blow teams out in embarrassing fashions. Other times they're winning these close ball games that for a bullpen that we all like to complain about, they're able to find a way to do it. And man, Saturday and Sunday in Cleveland, finally getting the monkey off the back. This is good stuff. This is what you want to see. This is how they should battle after losing 2 in a row on Thursday and Friday by taking care of business here, Steven. What went right for them?
Colson Montgomery hitting home runs is one of the things that went right for him. I talked earlier about some of the defensive struggles over the last 2 weeks. He had a really rough June offensively. I was talking to somebody a few days ago, and I kind of spelled out his numbers since June 1st. It was like 181, 252, 415. Like, it was a really rough stretch with like a 38% strikeout rate. And, just seeing him get attacked constantly by high fastballs at the top of the zone and swinging through them, not being able to lay off the ones even out of the strike zone. So getting him to drive the ball and make an impact offensively was very significant there. So that was a big thing. And then, you did get a good bullpen outing in the game on Saturday. And, look, for as maligned as this bullpen has been, they did the job on Sunday. When that game got to 6-6, okay, after the costly error by Colson Montgomery and the 3-run homer by Gabriel Arias to tie the game at 6, they locked in after that. So, and that is just one of the things about the volatility of this bullpen, unfortunately. You're going to have those blow-up games. And like I said, I know it annoys me, like if it happens against Cleveland, but you're also going to have these games where guys are going to go and they're going to be lights out, So they just kind of won a classic White Sox style game here in 2026 or games, hitting the ball out of the ballpark. We see the only team in the league that has hit more home runs than them this year is the Yankees. Like, this is how this team wins games. And that's something that Steven Stone was talking about in the broadcast on Piss Dick on Sunday, that's how the White Sox win games. They win games by hitting the ball over that fencing that gets set up prior to the game. That's what they do. Ball go far. So, I mean, that's really what it comes down to there.
Ball go far works. On Sunday, you look at this. You had a home run from Kyle Teel in the first inning. Tristan Peters leaves the yard. Colson Montgomery leaves the yard. That's when you're getting production out of guys like Tristan Peters in clutch situations. That's sort of, in my opinion, the difference between what a bad baseball team that we watched for years, and then you get like a 9-hole guy, or I would think he was hitting 8th in this ball game. But Tristan Peters, man, he's hitting 295 right now. What's his OPS is above 800 still right now. He's finding ways to get on base. He's finding ways to be productive, and he comes through in some pretty clutch spots for you. And I mean, the lead disappeared in this ball game a couple of times. You go up 2-0 in the first. Cleveland answers with 3, and you sort of think, all right, what is this going to be, a shootout? And this is after a lengthy delay because Cleveland's grounds crew might be the worst in Major League Baseball. Yes. We need to talk about this. This is not the first time that the warning track has been an issue in Cleveland on a Sunday when we're trying to sit down and watch baseball in the afternoon. And you're looking at the field. We got the broadcast up. It's on Peacock because, let's make everybody purchase a streaming service on their holiday weekend in order to watch any baseball on Sunday. So we got to get that going. And, I kind of appreciate the fact that they leave the ballpark cam on, Steven. I will say that's pretty cool that they do it. But you and I are texting back and forth about this ballpark cam for a variety of reasons. And I didn't really realize how bad the warning track was until they cut into the actual broadcast and we start looking at what is just a cesspool of slop all over the warning track. And you got Cleveland's catchers walking out of the bullpen, stepping through this nonsense, telling his manager that this is unsafe to play on. Everybody's sort of looking around. Nobody knows what to do. There's forklifts carrying in tons of drying compound and dirt, and you've got what looked to be like 18-year-old kids running around cracking open bags of Diamond Dry and trying to toss it out there in whatever manner. I have to say, I know our guy BZ is shat all over Roger Bossard this year, which he shouldn't. Roger's one of the best in the business, but you don't see this type of shit happening in Chicago, Steven. You don't see this type of shit happening almost anywhere in Major League Baseball, but it happens in Cleveland seemingly a lot.
It really does. And I mean, that's just why, we really need to start chanting Cleveland sucks more often, because they really do. They are just, Cleveland, they're just a steaming pile of, well, if you get the reference. But it's just like, how does a Major League grounds crew allow that to happen? How does he allow the starting pitchers to go into the bullpen, start throwing, and realize, oh shit, there's a fucking lake out there on the warning track?
It was bad. How did they not see that when they got into
when they took the fucking tarp off?
Well, then they pour the tarp water all over left field, and of course, Sam Antonacci has a moment out there.
I got some things I need to say about Noki boy.
That's fair. His left field play is questionable. I'm not going to argue with his OBP or the way that he plays the baseball game. I somewhat enjoy it. However, I was not a fan of the fact that we were slipping all over the field. I don't know, but I kind of blame Cleveland's grounds crew on that one as well. But I'll give you the microphone. You can say what you need to say. I'm sure that it's going to go right over my head because it's probably just going to be anti-Italian American discrimination.
Does that sound like something I would do?
Yes, it absolutely does. It absolutely does. So we'll give you your platform here.
How dare you besmirch my character like that? That is just uncalled for. At the end of the day, somebody needs to get in his ear and get him to understand that there is a difference between aggression and dumb fuckery. Okay? Because he's crossing that line into dumb fuckery far too often on the bases of late. Like, this stuff can't continue. Okay? I too do appreciate the fact that he gets on base at the top of the order, and dare I say, sets the tone. You can't go and negate that, though, by doing stupid shit and giving away outs on the bases, especially because we got a little somebody coming back here in short order that's going to be hitting behind him. So you need not be giving away outs when the Southside Samurai steps into that batter's box. So that's my PSA, Noki boy. Get your head out of your ass on the fucking bases.
Fair enough. It's not the first time we've seen some Sam Antonacci aggression, or as you put it, dumb fuckery on the base paths.
Yeah. One other thing that I want to talk about from this series here is we need to start putting some respect on Sean Burke's name, because he went out there and he just dropped him on their fucking head on Saturday. He just took it and dropped them right there. It said, here they are, boys. You ain't gonna do a fucking thing.
Is he your number one starter right now, or is it still Davis Martin? Because I know you and BZ sort of dug into some recent Davis Martin struggles. I know his previous start to what we saw in Cleveland was a lot better, but you guys did a post-game recap. Only went 3 1/3 in that ball game. Gave up too many runs, in my opinion. They lost the game.
Personally
think Sean Burke has had a good body of work lately.
From a stuff standpoint, I think that we have gotten to a point here where Sean Burke is the best starting pitcher on this staff. And I think the thing that is particularly important is that he has really done a nice job. Aside from there were back-to-back starts in the month of June against the Phillies and against the Dodgers, where he had 5 walks in both of those outings. But if you look over the course of the last 6 weeks, okay, aside from those 2 starts, he is doing a great job of controlling the strike zone with more regularity and getting more swing and miss. And he's doing it also in some big game situations. And I think that is something that cannot be overlooked. He went head to head against Cleveland and Parker Messick twice. And he went out there and he absolutely shoved. Remember what he did in Yankee Stadium with all those grease balls yelling at him. Now, granted, there was an opener used in that game, but he went out there and he finished that thing off. He went out there on Saturday when this team needed him, and he went out there and he gave them 7 innings. Like, that can't be understated enough how important that is, that he has really become a guy that has stepped up in pivotal game situations. And I know there's going to be somebody out there that's going to reference that start against the Phillies and the start against the Dodgers. But if we really look at the body of work here, he's a guy that, in a big game situation, I feel pretty good with Berkey on the mound.
Hey, fair. I'm just saying, if we're getting to a point, obviously you want to see some additions to this rotation if the Sox are serious about contending, Steven. And I know trade deadline stuff isn't on our agenda for the day, so this will probably just be the little foray into some trade talk. But if we're going into a playoff series right now, I think Sean Burke might be my number 1 guy. I don't know about you.
I feel the same.
Okay. Yeah, I think he's your game 1 guy. Davis Martin is definitely up there as well. But I just, at this moment, July 6th, I've got more faith in Sean Burke to win me a baseball game than Davis Martin. And that's not to say that Davis Martin hasn't had a really good season so far. I just don't know what we've got left in the tank. That kind of scares me. And that's probably why you need to go make some acquisitions. Sonny Gray sounds great, and he would be my number 1 guy. I don't know if you're going to be able to go out and acquire him or someone of that ilk, but as of right now, for me, it's Sean Burke.
Yeah. As it stands, as presently constituted, yes, Burke is the guy that I would give the ball to in game 1 of a postseason series. Baz and I, we talked about this, recently, and, we won't go too deep into it here today, but, look, the lack of separation in the American League in particular, and the fact that there's really only 5 teams across baseball that are going to be definitive sellers. We still have, trade deadlines on August 3rd, so we still have, 4 weeks until we get to that point here. So a lot of things are going to happen here. And the Sox kind of have an opportunity to force some teams' hands that maybe are on the fence. You got the Ginger Sox coming in here for 3 starts.
Wouldn't it have been nice not to get swept by Detroit?
It really would have been. Yes. So you
not that they're going to be in the Tarek Skubal race at all.
Right. Right. But, you're going to be in position here to make the decision a lot easier for the Ginger Sox. You got a chance to make the decision a lot easier for the Sacramento A's. You got a chance to do that. Coming out of the break, you got 3 in Toronto. You got a chance to make it real easy for the Blue Jays as they're tumbling. So they have an opportunity here before the close of July to help impact what is going to happen in this trade market. And I think it would behoove them to go out there and to step on some teams' throats. And, you mentioned Sonny Gray. I think that is someone that would be a viable option. But again, I think the competition for a guy like him is going to be very high. The same thing for a guy like Michael Wacha. And then, look, we're going to have to talk about this as we get closer to August 3rd is, are you ready to be uncomfortable with a potential trade that this team makes? And I think that as we sit here today, and this team is in first place, a percentage point ahead of Cleveland, but 1 up in the loss column. They really should just fuck around and go win this division, especially seeing how this team plays at home. They really need to prioritize winning this division and not being a wild card. That's just my opinion. So how they go about getting to that point remains to be seen over the course of the next 4 weeks. But, it's going to be interesting. And they have an opportunity to play a big factor in teams' decisions to buy or sell.
Steven, I was told that flags fly forever.
Big if true.
Flags do fly forever. Legends also never die. Now, talk about this. It's not the pitching side, but there was some positive updates about, our big slugger in the lineup, Munetaka Murakami. He's nearing the point of return. Technically started his rehab assignment today. Charlotte's off. He'll get his first action in Charlotte with Charlotte tomorrow. And, if history, continues to go the way it did, Kyle Teal's rehab assignment was very, very short. They had the same injury. I think, what did they give him? 2, maybe 3 games down in Charlotte, and he was back. That sort of tells me that Munetaka Murakami will be here this weekend prior to the All-Star break for that series against Sacramento. Now, there was a lot of debate on whether or not Kyle Teal was rushed back. I think that, so far, would you have liked more out of Kyle Teal? Yes. Is he the same catcher he was behind the plate last year? Not as much. I saw a lot of complaints about that recently.
He looks like shit back there.
Well, that's what happens when, you've missed a lot of time. Again, his bat in this lineup is what I want. Drew Romo has looked bad back there, and so is Edgar Quero. We'll talk draft in a minute, but that kind of also comes into play here when you look at what you actually have behind the plate and trades that may be uncomfortable for you as we look forward into the future here. But Munetaka Murakami, nonetheless, on the road to recovery, which is also what our show title is named. Steven, there's going to be a roster crunch. You're going to have to get rid of someone here when Munetaka Murakami comes back. You've got Jacob Gonzalez, who's come up. He struggled mightily out of the gate. Did not look all that great. There were a couple of good games sprinkled in there, some timely hits. He really picked it up over the last week or so here. I think he's played somewhat serviceable first base. Now, some of the actual, aesthetic first base plays that a traditional first baseman may make, he kind of struggles on. Some, hot shots down there. He's fielding them like a shortstop would, and it's gone in the Sox benefit. I think he's a guy that can kind of rotate around the infield, but also could he be, traded here in one of those uncomfortable moves? Other names that I would probably throw on there, and maybe you might throw a couple more. Junior Perez is he needed right now? Is Junior Perez needed? I would argue maybe not. Maybe he's the move to go back down, but then you're shortening the outfield and you're adding more infielders if you're trying to carry Munetaka and Gonzalez at the same time. Acuna does not seem to be the guy that they are willing to part ways with, especially after the Luis Robert Jr. trade. They seem to really like him. He's come through in some spots. But the list of names for guys to either send back down or potentially trade, move, do some of this stuff with is going to be something that we're going to either need to talk about by Thursday or at least after the All-Star break. So, Steven, I kind of want to get a sense of what you're looking at. If you're Chris Getz from a roster construction standpoint, what's the ideal move here? We've got some comments coming in, Praz. We will get to those in just a minute, but I want to hear Steve's answer on this first, and we will get to these comments.
I think for me, the roster solution is very simple. Jacob Gonzalez goes to Charlotte, and I know there's people out there that are not going to like that, but the fact of the matter is that he does need to be seeing everyday at bats. He has options available to him. They don't really have another good option. Like if you know, Junior Perez has options, but then you're taking away a right-handed bat off of the bench. So I think that's another important variable to think about. Like for the first time that I can remember in really probably my entire life, this lineup is very left-handed. It's like I can't ever remember a time I've said this in my life. So having a right-handed bat off the bench, and Junior Perez has shown some pop. Okay. So, but the greater overarching point is I just think that Jacob Gonzalez needs to be playing every day. And really there's just not going to be an opportunity for him to do that unless they want to try to shuffle some things around where, maybe he gets a start at second base for Chase Mydroth, but they haven't really shown a willingness to do that. Maybe he gets a start at DH, but I'm going to tell you something, and I'm going to shock a lot of people here with something. Since Mooney went down on May 30th, there is a player on the White Sox roster that in 99 plate appearances has a 258, 333, 539 slash line, which is good for a 141 WRC plus. Pretty good. That's fucking Noodle Boy. So we've reached this weird, bizarro place where
wow. I'm impressed here, Steven.
We're saying that Noodle Boy isn't a liability. And so I just think that with all of these different variables here, the only thing that makes sense is for Jacob Gonzalez to go to Charlotte and just play every day. And again, he's got options available. So guess what? If there is an injury that happens again at some point later in July or in August, and you get to those dog days, you've got an option there, and you've got someone that looks like a viable major league option. There hasn't been many circumstances in recent years where we've been able to say that and say, hey, we've actually got a viable major leaguer playing down in Charlotte because we don't really have a spot for him.
It's typically been 4A guys.
Yeah.
That come up and do that. Now, I haven't looked at Jacob Gonzalez WAR or any of these stats or anything like that, but I would say the eye test tells you that he is viable at the very least. Let's get to this comment here, Steven. We've got a lot to get to and a short amount of time to do so. Here we go from Prazmaster. Do you think the Sox can win the AL Central as currently constructed? I would venture to say, and I'll take this one first, because we're talking about this, I don't really know that the answer is yes. I would say that the pitching staff definitely needs some reinforcements. Number one, at least a starter, someone who can fit in there and, at least cover some innings. The Sox have been incredibly lucky, and you look across baseball right now, that they haven't really been bitten by the injury bug too much in their starting rotation. Obviously, Shane Smith dealt with his injuries so far. Drew Thorpe is somewhere. He's kind of like, where's Waldo? No one knows where Drew Thorpe is right now. Hopefully we find him someday. But again, I'm not looking at either of those guys, Steven, and saying they're going to be the savior. As much as I look at the offense and say, all right, we've gotten Kyle Teal back. You're going to get Munetaka Murakami back. I feel like the lineup's a little crowded. We're talking about pushing a guy like Jacob Gonzalez down to Charlotte just so that he can come up in the event of another injury and fill in. You've also got Everson Pereira is probably going to come back at some point. Austin Hayes is still on this roster. There's guys who could potentially.
Austin Hayes' ass is getting Wally pipped. He's done.
I think I saw some video of him running around or taking BP this past weekend in Cleveland. Who knows what's going to happen? But you've also got bench guys like Randall Grichuk. I feel like there's enough offense at this moment to kind of get you there. Would another bat hurt? No, but I don't think that that's priority. I think a lot of the additions need to come on the pitching staff side, and I haven't even talked about the bullpen. Someone lock some games down at the end. Grant Taylor has also proven that he can struggle in the ninth inning and is human. A lot of people have been really mad about Sir Anthony Dominguez, and rightfully so. He's been hot trash since getting here, and you need help at the back end. The last, say 2 weeks, Steve, I feel like we've been playing a little bit of this game of how do we survive with this bullpen because they're so tired, because our starters don't give us enough length. And we've had a lot of guys step up and cover some innings. Sean Newcomb, shout out Sean Newcomb, has done a tremendous job of covering those innings. Brandon Eisert, even though I still believe he's a bit of a liability, has also shown the ability to do some of that. You talked about on our last show, Tyler Schweitzer coming in and giving us what we needed. But I just feel like you're sort of just borrowing these bullpen performances, and eventually you got to cash those checks. And I feel like they're a little overextended, Steven. I don't know about you in the bullpen. So I think that's probably my number one priority. And my number one liability for this team is the bullpen right now. It would be really nice if they had a Mike Vassell.
Well, the Hawkaroo famously used to say the best way to protect your bullpen is with your starters. So to answer Praz's question, as currently constructed, I don't think they can. And this is a concern that I have expressed for a number of weeks now. My concern is that on August 17th, that some of the guys that you mentioned that have been leaned on very heavily, Sean Newcomb, Grant Taylor, Brian Hudson, that they're going to be out of gas because of the number of innings and the number of appearances that they have had to rack up because the starting pitchers do not go deeper into games. So I think that the top level priority has to be a starting pitcher, one that can reliably and consistently get those 18 outs that I so covet. Okay. Whether that is Michael Wacha, whether that is Sonny Gray, I don't know. We'll find out again here over the course of the next, 3.5 weeks or so, what other options might be available. But I definitely think a starting pitcher is priority number one. And there also does need to be a reliever acquired as well to help fortify that bullpen. I almost think that if they could get a guy like a Wacha or a Sonny Gray that you can slide into the rotation, maybe then for the remainder of the year, a guy like Noah Schultz maybe gets moved into the bullpen into a multi-inning role. Okay. Maybe you see something like that happen. Some of the, you mentioned some of the guys in the system that you can't really rely on right now. I mean, a guy like Mason Adams, who has come back off of Tommy John. He's had 3 outings in Charlotte to this point. His first 2 went very well. He got bombed last Tuesday. So can you realistically count on him? No, but I wouldn't doubt if we see him at some point. But I think, again, the starting pitching, first and foremost, that has to be priority number one. And then there has to be another reliever acquired as well. Like I know Jim Bowden on Foul Territory, floated this idea of them trading for Sonny Gray and Aroldis Chapman. That would be certainly an interesting transaction to make. I just don't know that the Sox would have the appetite to give up the capital that would be needed in order to acquire both of those players. And also, I just still think that other teams would be able to make a more compelling offer personally, but they've got to find ways to get 2 more arms, one for the rotation and one for the bullpen. And if they're able to do that, I will feel pretty confident and feel the vibes will increase, we'll say.
That's fair. Steven, I'm just looking at some bullpen arms here. From an innings pitch standpoint, Sean Newcomb last year was able to throw 92 and a third. He's currently at 52. He's on pace to exceed that 92 so far. And I wouldn't be shocked if he, gets near 110, 115 innings by the end of the season. His career high was back in 2018. He was a starter in Atlanta for your Barbs through 164 innings that season. He's a long way removed from that, but it's somewhat good to see that he was able to put up 92 innings just last year with both Boston and the Athletics. But there's not a lot of history that says that that's going to really be the case, Steve. 10 innings in 2024, 15 innings in 2023. 2022, he threw 27 innings. 2021, he threw 32. So, a healthy Sean Newcomb is imperative for the success to this ball club. You go to Grant Taylor, it's second year in the league. He's already exceeded the career high he threw last year, which was 36 2/3. He's at 45 2/3 right now. So you're kind of in the danger zone with him. Don't know how much more you're going to get out of Grant Taylor. Obviously, you hope he can trend towards 90 innings for this season. He's sitting at 45 right now and remains healthy and effective through that. And then you go to Brian Hudson, man. He's sitting at 39 innings right now. His career high in 2024 was 62 1/3. So there's not a lot of history here that says that these guys are going to continue to be able to weather this storm. And the last one, obviously, is a guy that everybody wants to talk about in Sir Anthony Dominguez. Steven, last year, he pitched 62 2/3. He's at 29 innings and 2/3 so far. So he's on pace to match his career high as well. There's a lot of guys that are at the back end of this bullpen that are on pace for either career high or exceed their career high, or already exceeding their career high in innings pitched and workload. I know this has been said a lot. This bullpen wasn't built for this team to compete in the AL Central. They're doing it, but I kind of feel like you're going to need another arm in there to help you weather that and give you those innings. So, Steve, well said. I just wanted to throw some stats behind it, and thank you for the question. Prazmaster. Steve, do any of those numbers surprise you?
No, they don't. And that's, again, just comes back to one of the things that I was talking about consistently. I would say the first 6 to 8 weeks of the season was just that the starters were not working deep enough into games. And there was going to come a point where this was going to catch up to the relievers. And it's kind of making me wonder here over the course of the last couple of weeks, as we've seen Grant Taylor kind of, have some struggles in there. Is that a byproduct of the usage that has, been required of him to this point, for them to be in the position that they are? So, Chris Getz, we know you're listening, because why wouldn't you be? You've got a tough task ahead of you here, is you've got to figure out how you can find a way to supplement this team, particularly from a pitching staff standpoint here. Unless this team just wants to, go all 2,000 White Sox and just, bash their way to a division title, particularly in the second half here and everything. But, if they want to do that, okay, fine, but I think getting some reinforcements for the run prevention would also behoove this team.
I agree wholeheartedly, Stephen. We've got two quick hit topics to get to before we close this thing down. First being All-Star game coming up, All-Star break. I know you get extremely excited about watching the All-Star game, Stephen, and everybody else does as well. I'm a home run derby guy. I'm glad that we're back to more of a non-pitch clocked version of the home run derby. Not exactly entirely happy with the format. I'd like to go back to 10 outs, but I digress. We'll have time to talk about that as we near the All-Star game and home run derby. But Miguel Vargas going to represent the White Sox. A lot of people are saying that we've had a lot of snubs this year. Coltswood Montgomery, Davis Martin. I think you can throw a couple other names there in the mix as well, but The anti-White Sox national bias seems to be a little bit at play here. Miguel Vargas, I believe, is our only representative at the moment. It was out there in the streets today. We might also be sending one of our ball girls out there in a fan vote to represent the Chicago White Sox. Not sure if you saw that today, Steven, but there's a movement and a campaign to get our ball girl to go represent the Chicago White Sox at the All-Star game. And I just kind of feel like we've got some snubs here. Steven, what's the deal with this? Do the White Sox need more #respect?
What I think happened here, and I'll start with Colson Montgomery in particular. He's like 4th or 5th in the league overall in home runs, but that tough month that he had during June that I referenced earlier on in the show, I think that played a big role in him not being selected here. When you slash 185, 252, 415 over the course of a month leading up to the All-Star break, that's not going to help your candidacy. So I think with him in particular, that hurt. And, Davis Martin, you look at those home road splits, they are problematic. And I think the one start that started in Yankee Stadium hurt him in particular. And we all know how magnified everything gets when you pitch in that sweaty, disgusting hellhole, with all those grease balls there. And, unfortunately, just so much of the national media centers around New York. And when you go and you have a start against that team and you lay an egg like that, unfortunately, there's going to be negative reverberations as a result of that. And I think that start in particular, has been weighted probably unfairly against him. But I think that definitely played an impact in his, not being selected at this present point in time. Now, I think, the way that the rotation is lined up, he's going to pitch on Wednesday. So he would be someone that I think could be eligible as a replacement for any starters that maybe pitch on Sunday that wouldn't, be eligible here. And, unfortunately, I think, as we look at it, well, Sean Burke actually should end up pitching on Friday. So he's another guy that maybe could be someone that could serve as an alternate in place of another starting pitcher there. But I think with those two guys in particular were the ones that are probably the two biggest snubs per se in Colson Montgomery and Davis Martin. But also, we need to give our flowers to Miguel Vargas. And, this is a guy that is unbelievably deserving. He has been the White Sox best player through the first half of this season. If you would have told me on March 26th that I would be saying that on July 6th, I would have said, hey, whatever peyote or whatever substance you're taking, send some of it this way, because I'd like to get in on some of that, because I never would have thought that that's something that would come out of my mouth. But he really has been really the guy that's kind of held it together here. I think especially given the absence of Munetaka Murakami and, the volatility that we've seen from Colson Montgomery, Kyle Teal not being present. Vargas can't be commended enough for the job that he's done in the first half of this season.
Fair enough. I think you summed that up really well there, Steven. One last topic before we close this thing down. You are going to be in attendance at the Major League Draft this Saturday, Steven. I know it's kind of sad you won't be in attendance for the home run derby that'll take place at 35th and Shields with some White Sox legends like Jose Canseco and Alexei Ramirez all roided up. They're going to have a roid fest down there. Let's hope none of our guys, stumble upon whatever was left over in their bags, because, Colson Montgomery and Miguel Vargas don't need to hit an additional 20 home runs in the back half of this season. But I just think,
I wouldn't complain if they did.
You're bringing in some pretty notorious, home run hitters into the ballpark. to schmooze it up with some of these White Sox players. And, they might teach them a thing or two while they're here. But, Steven, you're going to be at the draft, and there's been a lot of noise. We've heard the name Rock Chalowski. I've seen Rock Chalowski jerseys at 35th and Fields already this season. Very aggressive. And he's been the consensus number one for quite a bit now. And then you've got a couple other names out there. Grady Emerson, high school shortstop. Some say his hit tool is better than Rock Chalowski's, and he's got a higher ceiling. Might be more of a risk, obviously a high school player, but they're saying, hey, look, give him 3-4 years. Where does he profile? And then you've got Georgia Tech's catcher, Vaughn Lackey. We talked a little bit about what was going on behind the plate. People are saying, he could be a guy that can stick behind the plate. Don't know how soon, his ETA is on making a major league roster. I would assume it's fairly soon. I have problems taking catchers. We talked a little bit on one of our last shows about drafting up the middle. Seems like they're going to go up the middle. But you're going to be in attendance for this one. And I just need some early predictions. What do you think the pick is going to be?
I still, as of right now, think it will be Rock Chalowski. But I've kind of just come to the point where I accept that whichever route they decide to go, I'm going to be okay with, and I'm going to trust the organization. I'm going to trust that Ryan Fuller is going to be able to develop whomever they take from an offensive standpoint. Vaughn Lackey has been talked about as being a generational catcher behind the plate. Grady Emerson at the shortstop position, as you mentioned. High school shortstops have a pretty good track record historically near the top of the draft. So, whatever direction they decide to go, I think they're going to get a quality player here. I think that there will be a lot of people hashtag mad online if it is not Rock Chalowski, just because that's the name we've been hearing for about a year now. So we'll find out. We'll see what happens. Either way, I think they're going to get a guy that, like I said, is going to play a position up the middle here. And I trust Ryan Fuller is going to be able to help them maximize their ability offensively. And, let's just hope that he follows suit, because the last time the White Sox selected number 1 overall in 1977, they took a guy that shares a birthday with me, and he ended up in the Hall of Fame. No pressure.
Fair is fair. Steven, that's about all the time we have for today's show. Thank you to everybody who tuned in. Make sure you're following the show at Sox On Tap on X. You can follow myself at Tony On Tap. You can't follow Steve. He's just a hashtag vibes guy, but he's not hashtag online. Make sure you're going to ontapsportsnet.com for all your Chicago sports literature and podcasting needs. Sox have a series coming up starting tomorrow evening. Unfortunately, Steve's not going to be in attendance because he's flying out of here. I believe you're going to be in somewhere on the East Coast, maybe Philly, somewhere in that area.
I will be in Philly on Wednesday, but I've got corporate Steve has a meeting tomorrow night that's going to preclude me from getting to the ballpark. A lot of corporate Steve obligations here this week.
Corporate Steve obligations. We'll see what we've got for a Thursday show, but I don't think Steve will be here, unfortunately. And then we'll be back to recap the draft and everything that took place this weekend, probably on our normal Sunday night show. But Steven took care of business. We were road warriors on the road to recovery, solving all of these problems in these horror show towns that the Sox have gone to and just had a hard time winning in. It's definitely better vibes, as you would say, than what we're used to. So let's take care of business against Boston at home. Let's take care of business against the Athletics. Let's get ourselves towards that all-star break in first place. I think that's the way to do it. And last thing I'll say right here is White Sox forever.
White Sox for life. Happy 30th birthday, NWO, tomorrow.